Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today, we're tackling the world of networking.
Oh, networking. Networking can feel like a bit of a minefield, can't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've all been to those events where you feel like you're just collecting business cards and making small talk.
Exactly. It can feel so superficial.
Why?
But that's why I'm excited about today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at the book Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi.
Never eat alone. Now that's a title that grabs your attention.
It does, and it really sets the tone for Ferrazzi's approach to networking. He sees it as much more than just exchanging business cards. It's about building genuine relationships.
Okay, I like that idea. So how does Ferrazzi go about building those genuine relationships?
Well, he actually starts the book by talking about his childhood.
Really? His childhood? What does that have to do with networking?
More than you might think. He grew up as a golf caddy at a country club, and he got to observe how the successful people there interacted with each other.
Interesting. So what did he learn from watching those golfers?
He realized that they weren't just using their money to get ahead. They were leveraging their network. They were constantly helping each other out, making introductions, sharing information.
So it's like those connections became a kind of currency.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway for all of us. Success isn't just about what you have in your bank account, but who you know and how you can leverage those relationships.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So what's the first step to building that kind of network?
Well, Ferrazzi emphasizes the importance of starting early. He actually tells a story about befriending a golfer named Mrs. Poland when he was just a teenager.
Mrs. Poland. What's so special about her?
Well, she had a wide network of connections, and young Keith Ferrazzi had the foresight to realize that those connections could be valuable. He made an effort to get to know her, and she ended up introducing him to her entire circle.
Wow, so even as a teenager, he was already laying the groundwork for his future success.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of Ferrazzi's key principles. You need to build your network before you need it.
Okay, that makes sense. What does that look like in practice?
It means not waiting until you're desperately looking for a job or a favor to start reaching out to people.
So be proactive, make those connections now so they're already in place when you need them.
Precisely. He tells a story about a guy named George who was planning to start a PR firm. And George's plan was to find clients after he got the business up and running.
Okay, so what did Ferrazzi advise him to do?
Ferrazzi told him to flip the script. Start building those relationships now while you have the time and energy.
Ah, I see. Make those connections before you're under pressure, so you're not coming across as desperate.
Exactly. And it also gives you time to build those genuine relationships. It's not just about what people can do for you, but what you can do for them.
So it's about being a contributor, not a taker.
Yes. And that's another key principle from Ferrazzi. Focus on giving, not taking.
Okay, but how do you give in a networking context?
It can be as simple as sharing an article you think someone might find interesting, or connecting two people who could benefit from knowing each other.
So be helpful, be generous, share your knowledge and your resources.
Exactly. And that brings us to another challenge that a lot of people face: cold calls.
Ugh, cold calls.
The dreaded cold calls.
I know. But Ferrazzi actually has some great advice for making them more effective.
Okay, I'm all ears. Any tips for making cold calls less painful?
Well, he uses this example of connecting Jeff Arnold, the founder of WebMD, with someone from Sony Electronics. And there are a couple of key takeaways from that story.
All right, hit me with those takeaways.
First, leverage your existing connections.
So tap into your network. See if you know anyone who knows the person you're trying to reach.
Exactly. It's all about those degrees of separation.
Okay, what's the second takeaway?
Do your homework. Before you make that call, research the person you're contacting. Find out what they're working on, what their interests are.
So personalize your approach. Don't just use a generic script.
Right. Show them that you've taken the time to understand their world and finally make it convenient for them.
What do you mean by that?
Instead of saying, let's chat sometime, be specific. Suggest a time and a place that works for them. So take the initiative. Make it as easy as possible for them to say yes.
Precisely. It shows that you respect their time and that you're serious about the conversation.
This is all great advice. I'm already feeling more confident about networking.
I'm glad to hear it, and we're just getting started. We'll be back after the break with more insights from Never Eat Alone.
I can't wait.
Welcome back. So you're ready for more networking wisdom from Ferrazzi?
I am. I'm really starting to see networking in a whole new light. It's not just about those awkward cocktail parties.
No. It's about building relationships that are mutually beneficial.
Speaking of events, I'm
Yeah.
curious about Ferrazzi's take on conferences. I've been to a lot of them. but I'm not sure I've always made the most of those opportunities.
Well, Ferrazzi has a whole section in the book on how to be a conference commando.
A conference commando, what does that even mean?
It means going in with a plan of attack, being strategic about how you spend your time, and
Oh,
maximizing your networking opportunities.
okay, I like the sound of that.
Like that.
So what are some of those commando tactics?
Well, first of all, try to connect with the conference organizers beforehand,
Really?
because it's a great way to get a behind-the-scenes look at the event, and it also puts you in a position to meet other key players.
Ah, I see. So it's about being proactive, not just showing up and hoping for the best.
Exactly. Another tactic is to try to speak at the conference.
Oh, wow. That's a bit intimidating.
It can be,
Yeah.
but it's also a great way to position yourself as an expert and to get your message in front of a larger audience.
Okay, that makes sense. What other commando tactics does Ferrazzi recommend?
He suggests hosting a dinner or a small gathering for people you want to connect with.
So create your own networking event within the larger conference.
Exactly. It's a chance to have more meaningful conversations in a more relaxed setting.
That's a great idea. Now, something we touched on earlier is the importance of being a giver, not a taker. How does that apply to conferences?
Well, think about ways you can contribute to the conference. Maybe you can volunteer to help out with something, or maybe you can share your knowledge with others.
Right. Be helpful, be generous, share your resources.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about what you can get out of the conference, but what you can give back.
Okay, that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Now, Ferrazzi also talks about the importance of choosing the right conferences to attend.
Yes. He says that events centered around shared passions are much more effective for networking than those generic industry events.
Why is that?
Because you're already starting with common ground, you're more likely to meet people you genuinely connect with.
Ah, so it's about finding your tribe.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Ferrazzi argues that you can learn more about someone by spending an hour with them doing something they love than you can in a dozen business meetings.
I like that idea. It takes the pressure off of trying to network, and it
Yeah.
makes the whole process more enjoyable.
Exactly. Now let's talk about what happens after you've met someone at a conference, or anywhere else for that matter. How do you keep those connections alive?
That's a good question. I'm definitely guilty of letting those connections fizzle out.
Well, Ferrazzi emphasizes the importance of follow-up.
Follow-up. I know it's important, but I'm not always great at it.
Well, he has a great tip for making those follow-ups more meaningful. He says you should reference something specific that you discussed in your conversation.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a generic nice to meet you email.
Exactly. It shows that you were paying attention and that you're genuinely interested in building a relationship.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I need to be more mindful of that. Okay, so you followed up after that initial meeting. How do you stay top of mind without being annoying?
Ferrazzi calls it pinging.
Pinging, like sending out little sonar signals.
Sort of. It's about those regular light touches that keep the relationship alive.
Okay, so give me some examples of pinging.
It could be as simple as sending a quick email to share an article you think someone might find interesting. Or maybe you see something that reminds you of them and you send a quick text.
Right, little gestures that show you're thinking of them.
Exactly. And Ferrazzi is a big fan of the birthday call.
Oh, yes. The birthday call. It's so simple, but it really does make a difference.
It does. It shows that you care and that you're paying attention to the details.
This is all great stuff. Now, earlier you mentioned this idea of super connectors. Can you tell me more about those people?
Sure. Ferrazzi describes super connectors as those rare individuals who seem to know everyone.
Oh, yeah. Like those people who always have the right connection for every situation.
Exactly. And Ferrazzi says that once you become friendly with a super connector, you're only 2 degrees away from the thousands of people they know.
Wow. That's mind-blowing.
It is. It really highlights the power of networking.
But how do you find these super connectors? Are they just born that way?
Well, Ferrazzi actually provides a list of professions where these super connectors often congregate.
Really? Okay, I'm dying to know. What's on that list?
At the top of the list are restaurateurs.
Restaurateurs. That's interesting. I wouldn't have immediately thought of them.
Well, think about it. They're always meeting new people. They're constantly connecting with their community.
Right. They're like the social hubs of their neighborhoods.
Mm.
Okay. Who else is on the list?
Headhunters are another one.
Headhunters, of course. They're always looking for talented people to connect with companies.
Exactly. And since they're constantly expanding their network, they can be valuable allies.
Okay. Makes sense. Who else?
Lobbyists are another group that Ferrazzi mentions.
Lobbyists.
Hmm.
I guess they have to be good at building relationships and navigating complex systems.
They do. And they're often hosting events and connecting with people from all walks of life.
Okay, so we've got restaurateurs, headhunters, and lobbyists. Who else?
Journalists.
Journalists, of course. They're always looking for interesting stories,
Rough.
and they have a wide network of contacts.
Exactly. And Ferrazzi emphasizes the importance of building relationships with journalists, even if you don't have a specific story to pitch.
So don't just reach out to them when you need something. Be proactive.
Right.
Build that relationship over time.
Right. Okay. Who's next on our super connector list?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Consultants.
Consultants,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. They work with a variety of clients and industries, so they're exposed to a lot of different people.
Right. And they're often thought leaders in their field. So they have a lot of valuable knowledge to share.
Okay, consultants. Got it. Who else?
Politicians.
Politicians.
Mm.
Really? I guess it makes sense. They're always shaking hands and kissing babies.
Well, their job requires them to connect with people and build consensus.
Right. So they have to be good at building relationships.
Exactly. Okay. Last but not least, academics.
Academics. Really, I wouldn't have thought of them as being particularly well connected.
It might seem counterintuitive, but they're constantly collaborating with colleagues, attending conferences, and engaging with students from diverse backgrounds.
That's true. I guess I tend to think of them as being in their own little world, but they actually have a pretty wide network.
They do. And their knowledge and insights can be incredibly valuable.
This is fascinating. I'm starting to see my own network in a whole new light.
That's great. And remember, these are just a few examples. There are super connectors in all walks of life.
Okay. So how do I actually go about connecting with these super connectors? It can feel intimidating to reach out to someone you don't know.
Well, Ferrazzi has a few tips. First of all, he says to be genuine. Don't try to be someone you're not.
Be yourself. Authentic connections are always the strongest.
Exactly. He also says to be helpful. Think about what you can offer the other person.
So it goes back to that idea of being a giver, not a taker.
It does. And finally, he says to be patient. Building meaningful relationships takes time.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of how to build a powerful network.
I'm glad to hear it. And remember, the most important thing is to just start. Take action today. Reach out to someone. Attend an event. And most importantly, don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Great advice. I'm feeling inspired to step up my networking game.
Welcome back to our deep dive. I feel like we've learned so much about networking already.
We have. There's so much valuable wisdom in Ferrazzi's book.
I'm excited to put all these insights into action, but I have to admit, I'm still feeling a bit overwhelmed. Where do I even begin?
I understand that. It can feel daunting. But remember, networking is a marathon, not a sprint.
So don't try to do everything at once. Exactly. Start small. Focus on building one genuine connection at a time.
Okay. So what's a good first step?
Start with your existing relationships. Nurture those connections you already have.
Right. Reach out to those people. Check in with them. See how they're doing.
Exactly. Then think about your goals. What are you hoping to achieve through networking?
Well, I'd love to advance my career and maybe even start my own business someday.
Okay. So think about the people who could help you achieve those goals.
Like mentors and potential investors.
Precisely. Ferrazzi calls them aspirational contacts.
Aspirational contacts. I like that term.
Make a list of those people. Who do you admire? Who would you love to learn from?
Okay. I could do that. But how do I actually go about connecting with them? It feels a little intimidating to reach out to someone I don't know.
Remember what we talked about earlier. Leverage your existing network. See if anyone you know has a connection to one of your aspirational contacts.
Right. Degrees of separation. I might be closer to those people than I think.
You might be. And if you can't get a direct introduction, think about attending events where they might be speaking.
Okay. What if none of that works out? Can I just reach out to them directly?
You can, but make sure you're not just asking for something.
Right. Be a giver, not a taker.
Exactly. Think about what you can offer them. Can you share an article they might find interesting? Can you connect them with someone in your network?
Okay. I'm starting to get it. It's not just about what I can get. It's about how I can help.
Exactly. And even if they don't respond right away, don't be discouraged. Just keep building those relationships.
So be patient, be persistent,
Yeah.
and keep giving.
Exactly. Now, what about staying top of mind with the people you've already connected with?
Yeah, that's something I struggle with.
Well, Ferrazzi emphasizes the importance of those regular light touches. He calls them pings.
Right, like sending a quick email or text just to say hello.
Exactly. Or maybe you see an article they might like and you forward it to them.
The little things like that can make a big difference.
You can. It shows that you're thinking of them.
Yeah.
And that you value the relationship.
He's also a big fan of the birthday call, right?
He is. It's such a simple gesture, but it shows that you're paying attention.
I need to get better at remembering birthdays.
Me too. It's a work in progress for all of us.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different strategies for building and maintaining a powerful network.
We have. And the most important thing is to just start putting these ideas into practice.
Don't overthink it, just take action.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to be a natural extrovert to be a successful networker.
Right. It's about being genuine, being
Yeah.
helpful, and being persistent.
Exactly. So go out there and start building those connections. You might be surprised at the amazing opportunities that come your way.
Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for networking.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the most important thing is to have fun. Building relationships should be enjoyable.
That's a great point. Networking shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be about connecting with interesting people and exploring new possibilities.
Exactly. So go out there and make those connections and see what amazing things happen.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.